Start a small business. No need to work 40, 50 hours a week, slaving your life away. Obtain financial freedom, be your own boss, and create your own destiny. Moguls are the new superstars. The path to country club membership and a leased Mercedes-Benz is paved in gold as you take your business trips to Orlando or Vegas. Validation from your in-laws is just an LLC and Facebook business page away. At least, that's what they tell you anyways. Through social media, websites, and targeted ads, you're sold an image. Small business owners seem to walk on water. You'd think you're the last person on earth working a regular job with a regular boss. But there's trouble in paradise, and its name is in over your head. People start looking to start their own business, don't know what they don't know. But that's why we started our Small Business Confidential podcast, to share what we've learned from years of experience. There's not a lot of people in on this, so remember, dear podcast listeners, you heard it here first, off the record, on the QT, and very hush-hush.
Hi, everybody. This is Mike Riley, speaking with Brook Riley and Amari, our engineer. How are you guys doing on this cold and wet day?
Well, good. We're eagerly awaiting summer.
Oh, yeah.
But it's Masters Week, so that's always a good sign.
I got to turn the Masters on. That gives me a jolt of spring to get me all charged up. Hope springs eternal when you're playing golf. But speaking of Hope springs eternal, let's talk about everybody out there who's got a small business, got some real estate, and they're trying to figure out, all right, how do I get the green going, right? So we're going to talk about some techniques that we've learned that hopefully will work for you. The first thing we want to talk about is this whole concept of scripting your day. And we've been kind of knee deep on it because we're getting some turnaround on our Airbnbs. We got to juggle the weather here in Cleveland. We've got outside projects going on. Weather's turning, calls are coming in. So there is a tremendous amount of moving parts happening. So I want to talk about the concept of scripting, which is, again, gets back to that concept of fail the plan to fail. So, Brooke, we've been doing a lot of very intensive scripting because of all these moving parts. What's your general thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, if you've got like a long punch list, like in my case, to violation work, a buyer's inspection, repairs you got to do. I mean, if you're not mapping this out and you're flying blind, you're just going to be wasting time, and which equals wasting money. So, like the more I do this, I think the better I get at them. There's certain aspects of like a violation list. Like let's take a violation list as an example. In our case, I'm reading through it and I'm figuring out within our company, like who can do what. Is this something where we have to strictly sub it out? Is this something we can do in-house? Is this something one of our kind of in-house subcontractors can do? You're looking at when the house is closing, how fast you need to turn this around. And I think one thing that we've done a good job at this go around is we've been more proactive in getting a lot of these violations done. So it's not, a total shit show a day or two before the house closes. So yeah, I mean, if you're not mapping it out, if you're not organizing the flow of work, you're just going to be wasting so much time and wasting, a lot of money.
It's funny. I was ironic that we're talking about this because a couple of days ago, there was a story in the New York Times. I don't know whether it was a story, maybe it was in the magazine. It was about a construction contractor in Massachusetts, and how it's just brutal having your own business. And I'm reading through it, and he's talking about how hard it is to hire people. You hire people, then they don't show up, and this and that. And I thought to myself, boy, does this sound familiar? 10, 20, 30 years ago. There's so many balls in the air. But what leaped out at me was, I mean, I felt for the guy who had his business, but there are a lot of people out there who don't understand what it's like to have a business, have an investment like real estate, because there are a lot of moving parts that go on. The hiring, who do you rent to? When I say hiring, who do you hire as the handyman? Who do you hire as a sub? Who do you hire as a full-time person? Do you want to do a bunch of part-time people? Like we have 2 or 3 guys in their 60s who are part-time. They work 2-3 days. Customers love them. They like working. They appreciate the work. But it is complicated out there. So there are a lot of people who have their own business, who are getting into real estate, who really don't know what they're doing. They just think, well, I'm going to, I love working with my hands. I love cooking, so I'm going to have a restaurant. Or I really want to get into real estate. And they don't even think why they want to get into real estate. Why not just put it in a T-bill at 5%? Because there's so many things that you got to do to manage that real estate. Fielding calls, middle of the night on a Saturday night, after you've gone out to dinner, the furnace just blew up on one of your properties. I mean, these are all the dirty little secrets, like we have our podcast, Small Business Confidential. But at the end of the day, you've got to be a master at organizing. That is the key. Back to you, Brooke, master of organizing. Your thoughts?
That's so important. And, you're looking at a ton of different variables. And I just use like the point of sale inspection sheet as a great example. Is it a lot of work on the outside? All right. Is it cold? Is it rainy? Do you have guys who are willing to work outside? If they're not, can you readjust, maybe save some of the inside work on a week where it's, rain?
Like this week?
Yeah. So if you're not good at organizing and setting assignments for whoever you have working, I mean, I think it's different, if there's someone out there listening who's got a point of sale sheet and they're hiring a contractor. I mean, if the contractor gives you like a total lump sum, hey, here's how much it costs, then you obviously don't have to review the daily assignments. It'd be good if you got a sense of, okay, so when can I expect to get these things done? I mean, I sometimes use like our realtor as like the bad cop, even though she's not. She's super nice. For some guys or subs who we have, I say, hey, look, my realtor, she's on my ass. I got to get this shit done. And, but I think in our case where we are the GC as well as the property owner, so we need to be even more structured and scripted and have things, assigned properly. And, here's the other thing too. In our case, once you assign it, that does not mean that it's going to be smooth. You got to stay on it every day. You're checking in with whoever is doing it, have a sense of when it's going to be done, staying ahead of it with the city, getting a reinspection scheduled. Like in our case, we have a great reputation with the city. So if we got like 95% of it done and there's just one thing left that we still have to do, like we'll bring them out and say, hey, listen, we got all this stuff done. We still have to do this. And most of the time, since the inspectors know us, they'll say, hey, I trust you. Just email me a photo when it's done. But you're constantly staying on top of like all the work that needs to be done.
The other thing that really struck me is when you spend time putting together a plan every day you're scripting out what your subs are doing, what you're doing, other people in your organization are doing. You script that out. If something goes south, if something's not working out, you're going to recognize where you just went off the road because you have a thorough plan. Does that make sense, Brooke?
Yeah.
And that's how you learn. Because now the next time you write a plan, you're going to figure, well, what happens if it rains? What happens if this guy gets sick? What happens if this? You're just getting better and better and better and better at anticipating problems and getting more sophisticated in making a plan has a greater success rate. But I want to throw one more thing out for everybody to think about in terms of a plan. When it's working, when it's not working. But let's focus on, okay, when it's working. Think about what the marketplace is out there. What does the market want? If you have some real estate and you're selling that real estate, you're getting that real estate organized, you're learning what properties are worth buying and what properties you need to unload. There's certain properties, bad location, you're endlessly fixing them up. You're looking down the road, you're seeing there's more fix-ups. It's time to exit that. If you're that construction guy who, he's working 60 hours, 70 hours a week, and what did he actually make? $1,000? Well, that's maybe you're maybe doing the wrong thing. Doesn't mean you shouldn't be doing construction, but construction is a pretty big, expansive word. It covers a lot of products that you can do under construction, like repairs. Repairs have huge margins because, first of all, nobody wants to do them. It's specialized. So let's say, for example, you want to build a house versus doing 50 repairs. You probably end up making more money working less time doing the 50 repairs. Let's say you have a property. You're going in there. And this time when you do an inspection, have that inspection forward looking. What are you actually going to be spending in the next 2-year window on this property? Foundation, roof, plumbing, electrical. So that plan to make money, that plan to own real estate includes a forward looking at what this house you're buying is all about. Your thoughts, Brooke?
Hey, let's stop here. We got to pay some bills. 30 seconds, and we'll be back.
If you enjoy listening to our Small Business Confidential podcast, we're sure you'll enjoy our first podcast, The Cleveland Real Estate Investor. We give outside investors an inside look into the real estate market in Cleveland. Cleveland has been on the rise, and investors from all over see those cheap prices and salivate. Our job is to educate those investors and steer them in the right direction with several years of experience of how to do it right and many examples of how to do it wrong. Find the Cleveland Real Estate Investor podcast on any app you listen to your podcast today.
Yeah, I mean, I hope anyone out there listening, if you're going to buy a property, that you're actually inspecting it. I think one thing too to keep in mind too is let's say that you own a house and you need to unload this thing like ASAP. And you get the point of sale list back and it's 4 pages long and you don't know anyone in the phone book to get this done. One thing to keep in mind is you can always tell your realtor, be like, listen, I'm willing to lower the price a little bit, but the buyer needs to assume these
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm trying to think like, there's a house that we have where in hindsight, maybe we would have been more flexible in maybe making the buyer assume some of the violations, just because dealing with the city sometimes can be a pain. Now, our violation list, it's not super long, but it's just one thing that I thought of when I, was over there this morning where, so I don't know, just keep that in your back pocket as when you're evaluating your asset, you're evaluating your property, you're looking at you're viewing this from a treetop view and you need to think realistic. You need to think, don't have it be an emotional decision. It needs to make practical sense. So I don't know if that's just an example of something that,
I'm gonna riff off that. I'm gonna give you 2 examples because that's a great point. This is all about understanding sales, and who's your counterparty, who's on the other part of this transaction. Now, let's say you are giving an estimate to somebody, and you know your numbers inside and out. You also know your customers. What are your customers like? You can put together a menu where it's got all the popular things there, and the price point is good for both them and for you. You're making money and they're getting a great meal at a reasonable cost. Okay. Let's say somebody's buying the house. Now you put the house on the market. Okay. Now, do you want to go for the tippy top price? No. Let's say the house is worth $250. Now I'm going to put it on for $275 and see who bites, as opposed to putting it on the market for $240 and now triggering a bidding war on that house, right? So if it's at $240, now you can go back to them and say, hey, listen, I got these 4 things that I got to get done. How about you assume that, and I'll sell it to you. And they're throwing out a number at $250. You've got one at $250, you got one at $245, $255. You're getting into a bidding war now. You go back to the guy and say, listen, I'll sell it for you for $250. And you let them know. Our realtor lets the other realtor know that this is now, we're getting multiple offers here. I'll sell it to you for $250 if you pick this up, if you do this. If you're a contractor, you're going out and selling work. You're listening to the customer. They like you. You showed up time for the estimate. You got a good reputation. They want to hire you. They just got to figure out, can I afford this guy? I want to do X, Y, and Z. And this is where your ability to negotiate down, where you say, all right, listen, how much do you have to spend? $5,000, $10,000, got budgeted for this year. I can give you a pay plan if you want to go $12,000. And how about if we do X, Y, Z for $12,000? As opposed to giving they say, I want you to do ABC. Give me an estimate on that. I think sometimes the best approach is say, what do you have to spend and what are your priorities? So they say, I really want to get this kitchen floor. I want to really get this counter. I hate this. I want to get this fixed. I want to do this. And say, all right, listen, I can do that for $10,000. Get all those done. Now you're working with people. You're working with the buyer of that house. You're working with that potential customer. There is a level of engagement that is different than the majority of people out there in the marketplace. I mean, one of the common features in the marketplace is the huge amount of people who just don't know how to listen to the other people they're working with. And they're not very imaginative of coming up with, different routes to get to that destination. Your thoughts, Brooke?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good, a good example. I think like a year or two ago, I was hesitant to, once you get the comps to go lower than what the comps are. But the more we've been through this, the more it just makes sense. And I know we've talked about this in previous podcasts, but, you price it right. And then you get into a situation where for all the houses that we've sold in the past 30 days, we've always been in a multiples situation. So, and the price point, has all of the houses that we've sold have gone over our asking price. So,
and quickly too, fast close. Don't underestimate the fast close. Think about if you're going for the moon on this price to buy this, to sell this house, it may sit on the market for 3 months. Well, factor in taxes and insurance and lost rent. Yep. How much did that cost you? While you're holding out for the big money. We have a client who did that. I thought he priced it too high on this one property, but that's another story. I mean, it's complicated out here in the marketplace. All right. Just because you have your own business, just because you own real estate, that does not mean you're going to be successful. Okay. Just because, I went to law school, I'm a lawyer now. Who cares? You may be a lousy lawyer, you may be a starving lawyer with no money because, you just don't know what you're doing. You don't know all the nuances of that particular field. And I think that's what I've come to appreciate. You go to college, you get this degree. Okay. So, all right. Now what are you doing? I think anything that you do, real estate, your own business, whatever, you have got to have those core ABCs. And I'll end on this note. Those core ABCs, you got to know how to sell, take some sales classes. Sales then bleeds into marketing, and don't fall into the conventional trap of marketing. I mean, I'll give you an example of marketing. We engaged a really good guy to coordinate our Google AdWords, social media presence, internet. And we just weren't hitting it. And then we decided, why don't we go a bunch of street kind of marketing, like church bulletins? Not only the church bulletins for our couple of our properties, our mansions, but engage the church secretaries in this venture so they can help sell our particular properties or go directly to the insurance relocators. How you market something, how creative you are is directly aligned to, do you have a sense of how to sell? And then, of course, the last leg in that three-legged stool is financial literacy, knowing your numbers. Are you making money on this? That $10,000 that you're investing, are you making money on this? Or could you just put it in a money market, a mutual fund at 5% and done no work? Your final thoughts, Brooke?
Yeah, I think especially too now, I mean, just with the economy and the market, you have to know what the market is. And, and like I'll end on this note, but I remember when I sold my first house in Cleveland Heights, I was working day and night, weekends, getting it perfect and cleaned. And it was on the market for, I think, like 6 hours. And our realtor, he texted me that you have 15 showings. And I signed an offer sheet like that night. Well, that was, the first summer of the pandemic. So the market was just insanely hot.
Why are you doing all this work?
Exactly. So, in the second house I bought and sold, I didn't do as much, but I was smart. At least I think I did the right thing where, every couple of months I would try to fix up one of my, I would try to do like one project every couple of months. So, because I knew I wasn't going to be in that house for super long. So when it came time to list, I didn't have to do all this work. I just had to, clean out the garage, give it a nice sweep and mop. But, our realtor, he walked in and, doing those little projects every month or two, it saved me so much time. And I was able to sell it at, a really good price.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we've covered a smattering of stuff, but at the end of the day, it's preparation, knowledge. Don't just stumble into anything without a plan. Have it scripted out day to day, week to week, some strategic goal that connects it to everything. That's what it is. So you can never, ever do enough planning. You keep writing, you tear it up on your legal pad, you write another variation, you tweak it, you edit it, you put it in there. And I'll tell you one thing, you've got it in your brain now in a different place. It's on paper, but the act of writing things down. In fact, final note. Final note here. I'll end on this story because this is a great story. I discovered, I think, my junior year in college, this would have been Ohio University. My junior year in college, I finally figured out how to study for a test. Finally. After grade school, after high school. And what I did the night before the exam, I would pretend I was the professor and I would write my own quiz. I had the music on, my turntable, listen to hard rock, whatever, Rolling Stones, you know, and I'm just pretending, okay, if I was the professor, I'd ask this question, this question, this question. So I'd write out the questions and then I'd fill in the answer, fill in the answer, fill in the answer, fill in the answer. So I had like 25 questions. And then I would put a piece of paper on the right side where the answers were. I'd ask the question, boom, answer, answer, answer. Covered all the key topics. And then I went to bed. And then I went to bed and went to sleep. And I let that subconscious, that, you know, that REM sleeping, man, that hardwired those answers there. And then the next day, I would walk into class and it would be, I'd look at that test. I'd say half the questions were already there, you know? And so what happens when you write it on a legal pad, you write, you rewrite, you write, you write. What happens is on that legal pad, it's hardwired there. And especially do it before you go to bed. If you're tossing and turning, nothing's resolved, it's for one reason. You have not finished resolving what you're doing tomorrow or how you're handling this problem. You got a problem, write it out, write down the solution. The solution could be, I'm going to think about this on the weekend. That's the answer. So we will end on that note, Brooke. All right?
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, Amari.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. See you guys later.
Thank you for listening to the Small Business Confidential. To support, please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Also add our podcast to your favorite streaming services. Everything is appreciated, and we'll be back soon with another episode and upload schedule. The person voicing the intro's name is Travis Riley. Thank you, Travis. And the music was done by our engineer, me, Amari.